Hi guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. This will be my first BooktubeSFF Babbles, and today's topic is best urban fantasy recommendations. And urban fantasy is a genre that I particularly really like and enjoy. I have read quite a lot of urban fantasy over the past couple of years, especially 2014, 15, 16, those years. I read a whole lot of urban fantasy, and it is one of my favorite genres to get to because they're so much fun. They're really easy to get through. They're sort of my comfort zone genre, I think. I love fantasies, but fantasy can take a lot of time to read because you have all of the world building and all of that. You don't need to have that in urban fantasy, and so you just have some fun action filled books. And so when you want to read something really quick and fun, then urban fantasy is one of my favorite genres to go for that sort of book. This first series that I'm going to talk about today is probably not a surprise to anyone who's been on my channel for the past couple of years. You have seen me talk about books from this series quite a few times because I've read quite a few books from that series over the past 2 years. The first series I'm going to talk about today is obviously the Dresden Files series by Jim Butcher. This is one of my absolute favorite urban fantasy series. I only have one more book left before I'm completely caught up to the 15 books that are out currently, and then I have a short story collection that's set in the world afterwards. And not only am I obsessed with the sort of universe, the characters, I'm also pretty obsessed with the narration of the audiobooks. So I highly suggest reading them in the audio form because James Masters, who's narrating these books, is amazing. I haven't come across a narrator I've loved as much as I do with his narration style. He has very distinctive voices for all of the characters, but that is not the only reason why I have this series on my list. First of all, the Dresden Files is following this wizard called Harry. Harry has a private detective office in Chicago, and he's very broke. He has no money at all because he's a private investigator of the occult, magical sort of things, and no one really believes in magic when it comes down to it, so it's really not an area that has a lot of customers in. But as things goes along, he teams up a lot more with the Chicago Police Department when they have some cases that they can't really solve, and the head of that department is Karen Murphy, who is one of my absolute favorite characters from that series. She's a really amazing character, and she develops so much over the books. And I also think Harry had some problems in the beginning because he is some of the things that he says in the beginning is very sort of stereotypical male opinions about things, about women and stuff, but there's not a whole lot of romance. I think the first couple of books has a bit of a romance, but since then there's been no romantic relationships at all in this whole universe. So there has not really been any romantic relationships in the Harry Dresden universe for 13 books, and so it's not about romance. So if you're afraid of that when you go into an urban fantasy, this is not what you're going to get here. It's full of amazing action and a lot of great characters, and all sorts of paranormal beings are part of it. There are vampires, there are shapeshifters, there are fae, and there are pixies, and all sorts of little creatures. And Harry also gets a companion of a dog at some point over the series, and that is an amazing character as well to have in. And then there's the demon Bob, who is amazing. He's in all of the books almost. I think he's definitely in a lot of them, and he's really funny, and he loves romances. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love this series so much, and I think everyone should at least check it out. And I will say go past the first 3 books, and if you're not sold by then drop the series. But I think if you I think there's a bit of a build up with the first 3 books, and from there I haven't been able to look back since. It's been a really fun ride, and I have so many of those books are part of my absolute favorite reads, and I love this series. Also, before I get into the next ones, none of the books I'm talking about today is actually standalone, so that's a little difficult. I have some series that are a little shorter than others, so they might be easier to get into. But let's get into the next series, and that is the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. This is currently, I think, a 10-book series, so it has quite a lot of books, and I read the first 6 books in that series, and Mercy is one of my favorite female heroines. She's such an amazing person. She's a car mechanic for Volkswagen, and she's also a walker. I think that's what they call it. It's been a while since I read a book from there, so I've sort of forgotten it. A walker, which is shapeshifter that shapes into a coyote, and they're very rare. There's not a lot of those left. So she's sort of been brought up in a group of werewolves, and so she knows all of the norms with the werewolves, and she's currently living at the same ground where the alpha of that area is having his pack. So she's not exactly a part of that pack, but she's been protected, if you will, so she's protected by their pack if something was going to come after her. Sort of, one of my favorite things about this series is that Mercy Thompson has some things that happens to her in one of the earlier books that is very problematic, but the thing that I like about it is that she's dealing with these things even where I am now. She's still dealing with some of the aftermath of what happened, and that seems really realistic, and that's one of the things that I like. And she's not one of those heroines who goes out on a quest on her own where she knows she will lose. She's pretty unfortunate when it comes to people actually being after her, obviously, but she doesn't go after something on her own. She's not one of those because she knows that she's weaker than some other creatures. So she often has a companion of a wolf. And I love some of the friendships that are in the series. There's a friendship between her and Warren, who is the second in line in the wolf pack, and he's amazing. And I like this. I ship his relationship with Kyle, and I love Mercy and Adam together as well. I know there's some people who think that it's not a really great relationship, but I sort of disagree. I've read quite a few books now, and the way that their relationship has changed is really amazing. It's not like he's very controlling, even though he's an alpha, so there's gonna be some things that could be difficult for him to understand because he's an alpha and he wants to control all of the people around him. But I actually like the way that they're working their relationship together, and so yeah. But this is pretty romance heavy when it comes to the later books, not in the beginning, but it's a sort of slow moving romance. So if you like that sort of thing, then definitely go and check this series out. This next series is actually one of the shorter series I have on my list. It's only 4 books long, and it is called Jamison by Molly Harper. This is, if you imagine Sophie Kinsella or another sort of chick lit writer actually writing urban fantasy. They're really, really fun. And the first one in that series is called Nice Girls Don't Have Fangs, and it follows this girl. I forgot her name right now, but she has a job at the library where she's fired from because of something that happens, and she's really, really angry with this. So she's at a bar where she's getting all of her anger out towards this man she's sitting at the bar with, and she doesn't. I believe she doesn't drink anything because she's driving home afterwards. And when she drives home, her car breaks down, and so she's on the road trying to fix things when someone runs over and just doesn't jump, runs her over in a speed. And the next thing that happens is that she wakes up and she's a vampire because she was about to die, and that was like. Yeah, and it turns out the guy that she was talking to at the bar was said vampire. And so she's suddenly framed for things that she didn't really do, and things started rolling on from there. And I really enjoyed this book. It was a lot of fun, and I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I really went into this not expecting a whole lot when I went into it, because I was like, it's just a chick lit, but it had a lot of great things in it as well. And there's something about the romance that I don't like, but that is another thing. That's a small part of this. I like the main character, and I like some of the relationship which she had with a friend, and there were some things that, and her dad as well was interesting. And yeah, I have only read the first 2 books in this series, so I don't know how it ends up, but I definitely enjoyed the first 2 books that I read, and I will get back to this eventually. This is a story of my life. I haven't finished a lot of these series that I'm talking about today. I haven't actually finished, but I've read enough that I feel like I can talk about them and how much I enjoy them. The next series that I'm going to talk about today is one of the series that I have finished, and that is, it's also one of the shorter series on my list, and that is called Gina Kincaid by Michelle Mead. Now, this series is about this girl called Georgina, who is a succubi. And she works at this bookstore as a sort of marketing manager or something. She's pretty high up in the ranks in the bookstore, and she's hosting this event for this book launch, and the author is someone she's really obsessed with. She loves books, she loves this, but she's very obsessed about this specific series that he's writing, and so she's standing there talking about how much she enjoys this book to this guy she's meeting at the coffee shop, and things go on from there, and it turns out that that guy is actually the writer of the book that she's just been gushing about for the past, yeah, I don't know how long, and so things go on from there. Obviously, because he's a succubi, people she's having sex with will lose some of their souls as things go along. So this is sort of a complicated relationship that she finds with Seth and how things go along from there. I really enjoyed the series. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it by the end, because in the beginning I wasn't super into it because there were some things that Georgina did that I was not really there for. But as the things went along and I found out her reasons for doing these things, as you got to know a lot more about her over the series, because you got flashbacks into her past. She has been a succubi for more than 100 years or something, so she has a lot of history to take from, and I really enjoyed that. And the side characters was amazing. She has a lot of friends that are both, some of them are vampires, some of them are demons. One of my absolute favorite characters from that series was Carter, who is an angel, and I didn't like him in the beginning, but how he ended up over the series, he was really amazing. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book series. It was one of those that got better and better as the series went on, and I was really happy with that. And I enjoy Rachel Mead's writing, and I enjoy her characters, and yeah, so if you're interested in a series, then definitely check out this series. I think it might surprise you a little bit. And yeah, the next series that I'm going to talk about today is the Night Hunter series. This is a series that is by Janine Frost. This is 7 books long, but it also has some side series that you can read alongside, because they're set in the same universe and they're happening sort of, if you skip them, you're probably a little confused about some people suddenly showing up. So I suggest that you read all of them and in publication order. But the Night Hunter series follows Catherine and Bones. Catherine is half vampire, half human. She was created because a vampire raped her mother. And so her mother has always been looking down on her a little bit, but she's trying to remedy a little bit by trying to find and kill vampires as much as she can. And one day she stumbles upon Bones, and she sets him, who is a vampire, and she sets herself the goal of killing him. But he pretty soon discovers what she's there for, and so he bests her, and instead they decide that they're going to be working together in order to actually kill her father, because they both have a bit of a vengeance towards him because of the things that he's been doing. And one of the things that Bones says is that vampires, the traits that they have as a vampire is the same that they had as a human. So if they were horrible human beings, there will also be a horrible vampire that just have more strength. And the same goes if they're a good human being, there will also be a good vampire, because it's this human that will just be having these more supernatural powers. So there's a lot of bad humans out there, but there's also a lot of bad vampires, and so that's sort of what the series is also about, and how they're trying to working together, and eventually they become a couple and all of that. If you don't like romance and sex scenes in your books, then definitely skip this one, because it has a lot of romance and has a lot of sex scenes over the series. But I actually ended up really enjoying the the series overall. I thought it was a really fun series, and I think that the characters were really interesting to follow, and I have read almost all of them. I only have one book left in this series, in this universe, so I definitely will recommend it if you want some good fun, and I really recommend the audios. They're really well narrated. The next series that I'm going to talk about is The Hallows by Kim Harrison. I'll try and keep this short because I can see that I've already been talking for quite a while and I have a couple of series left to talk about. But this is following Rachel Morgan, who is a witch. Which is in this world, she's living in Cincinnati, Ohio, I believe. And she is, in this world there are dark witches and white witches. And it's the way you distinguish between those two sort of witches is by the sort of magic that they do. Some witches do very dark magic where they use demon powers to do the magical things, and then there are white witches who uses more like earth magic and sort of that, doing different spells with nicer magic, if you will. And so Rachel is a white witch, and she's getting herself into some trouble because she tries to go undercover in a case where she has to try and frame Trenton Calamack, who is one of those people who's working the underground of Chicago. They're drug dealing and all of that stuff, things that you're not allowed to do. And so she's trying to go undercover to try and reveal him and get him framed. But things doesn't actually go out the way that she wanted to do. And so, yeah, if you like action-packed books, then this series is definitely something for you. Even though these books are 500 pages long, every one of them, they're really, really fast-paced, and they have some really interesting characters. Especially for me, Jenks, who is one of my favorite characters from this series, and I also really enjoy Trenton Calamack as the series progresses. He's a really, really interesting character as well as things go along. Is he a bad person? Yes, but he's really interesting as well, and I like the story arc that he's in. I really, really enjoy Crispin as well, who's also one of the characters from the series, and there's a lot of things that happens over the series, and it's not very romance heavy. It does have a bit of romance, but doesn't have a lot of it. So if you don't want romance in your books, then this could be a series that could be pretty fun to read. One of the things about the series is that she's living with her friend who's a vampire, and this vampire had a bit of a troubles controlling her bloodthirsty urges towards Rachel. So there's a bit of a thing there, but that's something that annoys me a little bit as it goes along, because that's a little bit too much about that, but that's also different with people's opinion about that. But yeah, definitely check it out if you think action-packed, fun, witchy stuff is something you like to read about. Then I think you'll find some really great enjoyment in this one. And Jenks is a pixie. He's like this big, and he has a huge personality for being so small. Anyway, I think one of my favorite books in this series were the fourth one and third one. I think fourth and the fifth one I was really enjoying up until the end, but yeah. I'm currently at book 7 of this series, and it's 13 books long. It is finished, so there's not going to be more books in the series, so I think that's also nice that it has a definite end to the series, and I like that. The next series that I want to talk about is The Elemental Assassin by Jennifer Estep. This is also one of my favorite series. This follows a girl who's an assassin, and she's an elemental as well. Her powers is that she can use earth elemental magic, and she has, it's called stone magic, so she can control the earth, but she also has some ice magic. She's one of the only elementals who has 2 elemental powers, but it's only the earth magic or stone magic that is very profound, and so not a lot of people knows that she has a little bit of ice magic as well. But one of the things about this series that I really enjoy is she has a really rough childhood, and so that's also why she's doing what she's doing. She's an assassin, obviously, so she's killing people for money. And while that's not always a good thing, I really like her personality and what we find out about her over the books as it progresses. and how the side characters, they're always there for her so far. At least the majority of them are. Yeah, there are definitely some really interesting characters in this series, and I enjoy the romance that happens eventually, not the one in the beginning, but you'll get to know that if you read it. But because the guy she ends up being with, choosing to spend a life with, or whatever, has been through some of the same things. So the way that they deal with things it's a bit angsty, but they're really there for each other, and I like that. That's the sort of angsty relationship I like. It's not super unhealthy, and they are really there for each other. And the sixth book that I read, I'll put the cover here. I forgot the title of that book, but I loved that book. It has the most amazing ending. There was so much closure in that one, and I really loved that. And I'm a little unsure about why I haven't continued this series, but I really loved that book. The next series that I'm going to talk about is The Others by Anne Bishop. This is a series that I've only read the first 2 books. I'm also working on the 3rd book, but I've only read the first 2 books. This is one of those sort of shorter book series as well. It currently has 6 books released. Either it has 5 book released and the 6th one is coming out, or they have just released the 6th one. These are pretty long. They're about 500 pages each. And if you're into high fantasy, this is a really good urban fantasy because it is kind of paced the same way that high fantasy books are. It follows this girl called Meg, who is a blood prophet, and she's been in captivity in this facility where they're using her for, they get a lot of money in exchange for a vision by her, and she can see visions of the future if you cut her. And so what happens is that she ends up escaping from this captivity that she's been in always, and she ends up at the courtyard, which is a place where all of these paranormal beings, they're living together, secluded from the humans, and the humans know they're there, but they don't really like each other. It goes both ways. These paranormal beings are, as you would expect paranormal beings being, like werewolves and vampires. If they can, they eat humans. So that way it's pretty realistic, I think. She ends up at this courtyard, and she takes in the liaison's office, and she's taking care of all deliveries that comes from the outside world, from the human world into the courtyard, as well as things that goes from the courtyard and to the outside world, so that they have a human sort of face to talk to when they get there, because they don't like talking to the paranormal beings, and they're a lot more anxious when it comes to the paranormal beings. So yeah, but this has a lot more to it than that. But you follow Meg from day-to-day basis, from when she arrives at the courtyard and until the end of this book and onwards, how she's dealing with life in the courtyard and finding out things about herself. And she's very innocent because she has never known the outside world. She doesn't know anything about anything except that she's a blood prophet, and she needs to cut herself to get these prophecies out. And yeah, so there's triggers for self-harm because of the blood prophecy thing, and she's cutting herself, and there's very violent, very explicit violent scenes. So if you don't like that, then this is not the book for you. But if you don't mind, then I think you should give this a try, because it's really, really powerful, and I really loved it. It was my favorite read of 2016, and yeah, I really loved this book. And the next series that I'm going to talk about today is the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. I've read the first 3 books in this series, and I've really, really enjoyed all of them. If you like Fae series, this is a really, really, really great dark urban fantasy Fae series that's set in Ireland. And the setting is so creepy and eerie, and they're so fast paced, and you still have, at this point where I am, still have questions about some of the characters and what they are, who they are, and who I'm supposed to trust and who I'm not supposed to trust. And I like that. I never really know what to think of people. And in the beginning I had a few issues with the main character Michaela, because she was a little but I like how she's developing as the series progresses. She's not annoying me very much anymore. She's really, really developed a lot since the beginning. And the reason she's in Dublin, suddenly is because that her sister is brutally murdered. So when the police decides to close the case, she decides to go to investigate herself because she has some clues that the police didn't want to take into account when they closed the case. So she wants to go there and see for herself if she can find something. And things doesn't really go as planned, and she finds out there are more to that city than meets the eye, and it's really, really good. They're really fast-paced, and I can't wait to get into the next one when I eventually unwrap it on my TBR unwrapping. The last and final book series I'm going to talk about today, I've been filming for half an hour. I hope I can cut a lot of this off because it's getting a little long. But that is the Chicagoland Vampire series by Chloe Neal. This is the third book, Twice Bitten, in that series. I only have 2 books, physical copies. I've read the first 4 books in this series and I really enjoyed it. This is by far my favorite so far. I really, really enjoyed this book. It was so amazing. The main character is called Merritt, and she becomes a vampire unwillingly. She was attacked by some horrible vampires and they bit her and was going to leave her for dead. And then this guy called Ethan, who's the head of, I forgot the house of the vampire house that they are in. There are 4 different vampire houses in Chicago, and she becomes part of one of the biggest ones and the strongest ones. And Ethan, who's the head of that, takes her in, and she's starting to try and get into the vampire life, even though she's not really enjoying it, and she's trying to fight against it. She doesn't really want to drink blood, she doesn't really want to be a vampire. But as things go along, she notices that she can't really change who she is, but she can try and be as good as she can and protecting the Chicago citizens from all of these supernatural people who wants to do something horrible to the world. And I love the characters. There are so many different friendships in this series that I really, really enjoy following. And there are friendships with some of the vampires from the houses, and then there's a friendship with her human friend, and her friendship with her grandfather, her relationship with her grandfather, and the secret society he's been a part of, and they're all really amazing, and I really need to get back to the series, but I hated the way that book 4 ended, so I don't know if that's why I haven't gone back to it, but I really, really want to get to the next book. I think it's called Drink Deep. But highly entertaining reads, and not your average vampire girl, and I love that. But these were all of the series that I wanted to recommend today. It was a bit of a handful, but I hope I'm not a bit of too much of a jumbled mess with this. I'm really trying to explain as best as I can, because I don't want to spoil too many things about this series and why I'm enjoying them so much, because I'm so far into it and I sort of forgot the main plots of the first books. But I hope I at least made some of you think about picking some of these books up. And I hope this wasn't too long when it comes down to it. But this was all I had for you today, so definitely let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of this book series that I've talked about. Have you any intention of picking any of them up? And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.